February 21st, 1994. 6:15 a.m. Arlington, Virginia. A CIA officer backs his Jaguar out of his driveway, headed for work like any other Monday morning. 3 FBI sedans block his path. For 9 years, this man had access to every Soviet operation the CIA ran, every agent, every asset, every secret. He knew the identities of Russians working for America behind the Iron Curtain. At least 10 of them are now dead, executed in Moscow's Lubyanka prison. His colleagues called him dedicated. His supervisors praised his analytical brilliance. His friends trusted him completely. For nearly a decade, nobody suspected that Aldrich Ames, respected CIA counterintelligence officer, was the most devastating mole in American intelligence history. Until one FBI agent noticed something impossible. A detail so small that Ames never knew it would destroy him. This is the story of how one man sold out the Cold War's most sensitive operations for $4.6 million, and how an obsessed investigator spent 5 years hunting him down. The Vulnerable Officer. 1983. CIA Headquarters, Langley, Virginia. Rick Ames sits in his cluttered office in the Soviet East European Division, surrounded by classified files that could topple governments. He's 42 years old, divorced, drinking too much, drowning in debt from his failed marriage. But he has something Moscow desperately wants: access. As a counterintelligence specialist, Ames knows the identity of every Soviet citizen secretly working for the CIA. He knows their code names, their meeting schedules, their vulnerabilities. He knows which KGB officers might be susceptible to recruitment. He sits at the intersection of America's most sensitive Soviet operations. And he's broke. His ex-wife is demanding money he doesn't have. His credit cards are maxed. The CIA salary that once seemed adequate now feels like an insult. Ames isn't an ideologue. He doesn't believe in communism. He hasn't been blackmailed. There's no hidden trauma, no burning resentment against his country. The calculus is simpler, more banal. He wants money. Moscow has money. He has secrets Moscow wants. The arithmetic is grotesque in its simplicity. The Approach. April 16, 1985. Soviet Embassy, Washington, D.C. Ames walks through the embassy's front door carrying a package. Inside, the names of 3 Soviet intelligence officers working for the CIA. Lower-level sources, nothing that would raise immediate alarms. A gesture of good faith. A sample. The KGB officer who receives him shows no surprise. This isn't a dramatic moment from a spy film. It's a business meeting. Ames offers product. Moscow evaluates. Within hours, his package reaches Moscow Center. The analysis is swift. This CIA officer has access to everything. The question isn't whether to recruit him, it's how much to pay. The answer? $50,000 immediately. More to come. Much more. Ames walks out of the embassy with a promise. He will return. And when he does, he will bring names. The betrayal begins June 13, 1985. Ames returns to the Soviet embassy. This time, his package is thicker. Inside, the identities of 10 Soviets working for American intelligence. Real names, code names, how they communicate, where they meet their CIA handlers. He's betraying men and women who risked their lives to feed intelligence to the West. Some are idealists who believe in democracy. Others are mercenaries like himself. All of them will soon be dead. The KGB pays him $2 million. That night, in Moscow, arrest teams mobilize. The targets don't know why they're being summoned to meetings. They arrive expecting routine briefings. They leave in handcuffs. Dmitry Polyakov, codename Topat, had spied for America for 25 years. He provided intelligence on Soviet missile systems, nuclear strategy, and military doctrine. The CIA considered him the crown jewel of Cold War intelligence operations. 3 months after Ames's meeting, the KGB arrests Polyakov. 2 years later, he faces a firing squad. The Golden Years, 1985 to 1989. For Ames, these are years of methodical plunder. Every month, he fills shopping bags with classified documents, walks them out of CIA headquarters, and copies them at home. His tradecraft is unremarkable. He doesn't use sophisticated spy equipment or employ elaborate counter-surveillance. He simply exploits the agency's most dangerous vulnerability: trust. Nobody searches his bags. Nobody questions why he's taking files home. He's one of them, a career officer with the right credentials, the right background, the right access. The institutional culture assumes loyalty until proven otherwise. The money flows. Dead drops in Washington parks. Chalk marks signaling meetings. Packets of cash hidden in trash bags. Moscow pays $300,000 here, $400,000 there. Ames deposits it in banks with minimal questions. He buys a $540,000 house in Arlington. Cash. He purchases a white Jaguar for $50,000. Cash. His CIA salary is $60,000 a year. Nobody notices. Or more accurately, people notice, but they explain it away. His new wife must have money. An inheritance, probably. Foreign relatives. Something. The alternative, that a trusted counterintelligence officer is living far beyond his means because he's selling secrets, is too devastating to consider. The human mind rebels against such cognitive dissonance. It's easier to believe in a wealthy wife than to confront the possibility of betrayal. Meanwhile, in Moscow, more arrests, more trials, more executions. Sergei Motorin, shot. Valery Martinov, shot. Vladimir Pigusov, shot. The CIA's Soviet operations collapse. Entire networks roll up. Assets vanish. Communication channels go silent. And Rick Ames continues his Monday morning commute to Langley, nodding to security guards who wave him through without searching his bag. The crisis point, 1986. CIA Soviet Division. The agency knows something catastrophic is happening. Operations that took years to develop are disintegrating overnight. But they don't know why. The working theory: Moscow has improved its counterintelligence capabilities. Perhaps new surveillance technology. Perhaps better analysis of communication patterns. Perhaps a mole inside the KGB is feeding them information. The one theory nobody seriously entertains: that the CIA itself has been penetrated at the highest level. A task force forms to investigate the losses. Rick Ames is assigned to help. The mole is now part of the team hunting the mole. He sits in meetings where investigators discuss possible explanations. He reviews reports about compromised operations. He knows exactly what happened because he caused it. And he listens with the expression of concerned professionalism that made him trusted in the first place. Years later, a colleague will remember Ames in those meetings. He was genuinely helpful. Insightful analysis, always asking the right questions. It never occurred to anyone that he was mining us for information about what we knew. By 1989, Ames has betrayed virtually every significant CIA asset in the Soviet Union. The damage is catastrophic. Moscow has executed or imprisoned dozens of sources. The CIA's understanding of Soviet capabilities has been blinded. The Americans are operating in the dark against an adversary that knows everything. And Rick Ames drives his Jaguar home to his Arlington mansion, where he and his wife plan their next vacation. But 4,000 miles away, a woman named Sandy Grimes is about to start asking uncomfortable questions. The Investigator, 1991. CIA Headquarters. Sandra Sandy. Grimes has worked in the Soviet division for years. She recruited assets. She developed sources. She knew many of the agents who were rolled up in 1985 and 1986. She remembers their faces, their motivations, their families. She takes the losses personally. The official investigation has gone nowhere. The task force produced theories, but no answers. The CIA's leadership wants to move on. The Cold War is ending anyway. The Soviet Union is collapsing. Why dwell on old failures? But Grimes can't let it go. 10 people she knew are dead. Someone betrayed them. And that someone is still walking free. She volunteers for a small, underfunded team tasked with one more attempt at finding the mole. Her partner, Jeanne Vertefeuille, a veteran CIA officer known for her methodical approach and institutional memory. Their resources are limited. Their mandate is vague. Nobody expects them to succeed where previous investigations failed. They start from the beginning. The Anomaly, 1991 to 1992. Grimes and Vertefeuille build a timeline. On one side, every CIA officer who had access to the compromised operations. On the other, the exact dates when those operations failed. There are 190 people with access. Most can be eliminated quickly. Wrong location, wrong timing, wrong clearances. But 40 people remain who could theoretically be the mole. Then they ask a different question. Who among these 40 suddenly experienced unexplained wealth after 1985? The CIA has financial disclosure forms. Officers are required to report significant income changes, real estate purchases, foreign bank accounts. In practice, enforcement is lax. People forget. They underreport. The forms gather dust in filing cabinets. Grimes and Vertefeuille start pulling forms. One name jumps out. Rick Ames reported buying a $540,000 house in 1989. Cash. His salary was $60,000. His explanation on the disclosure form, his wife's family money from Colombia. Grimes stares at the form. It's plausible. Colombian families can be wealthy. International marriages are common in the CIA. The explanation holds water. Except, she runs a credit check. Before 1985, Ames had $33,000 in credit card debt. After 1985, the debt vanishes. Bank deposits spike. He's making cash purchases that dwarf his salary. The Colombian wife explanation doesn't account for the timing. Why did the money appear immediately after the 1985 compromises? She brings it to Vertefeuille. They study the timeline again. Ames had access to all the compromised operations. The timing correlates perfectly. The financial windfall begins exactly when the betrayals start. It's circumstantial. It's not proof. But it's something. For the first time in 6 years, the investigation has a name. The Institutional Resistance, 1992. Grimes and Vertefeuille brief their supervisors. Rick Ames is a possible suspect. They need authorization to investigate further. Financial records, surveillance, phone taps. The response is resistance. Rick Ames? Respected officer? Been with the agency for decades? His father was CIA. He's one of the family. The Colombian wife explanation is perfectly reasonable. Lots of officers marry foreigners. Lots of officers have wealthy spouses. The financial disclosure forms aren't exact science. And consider the implications. If they're wrong, they'll destroy an innocent man's career and reputation. The agency can't afford another witch hunt. Remember the 1960s mole paranoia? That nearly tore the CIA apart. Grimes pushes back. The timing is too perfect. The amounts are too large. It needs to be investigated. Her supervisors compromise. They'll look into it quietly. No aggressive investigation. No full surveillance. Just basic due diligence. If nothing materializes, they drop it. Grimes knows what this means. Half measures that will produce inconclusive results, followed by bureaucratic closure. She has a small window to find irrefutable proof. The pattern emerges 1992 to 1993. Working with limited resources, Grimes and Vertefeuille dig deeper into Ames's finances. What they find is staggering. Between 1985 and 1993, Ames deposited $1.4 million in cash into American banks. He wired $2.7 million to offshore accounts. He paid $540,000 cash for his house, $50,000 cash for his Jaguar, and made numerous other large cash purchases. His CIA salary during this period, $540,000 total over 8 years. They investigate the Colombian wife's finances. Her family is middle class, comfortable but not wealthy. There's no inheritance, no windfall, no explanation for millions of dollars. They examine his travel records. Ames made multiple unexplained trips to Bogota, Colombia. He claimed they were family visits, but the timing correlates with dead drops and meetings used by the KGB. The pattern is undeniable, but patterns aren't prosecutable. They need evidence of espionage. They need to catch him in the act. The FBI gets involved. If this is real, it's their jurisdiction. The CIA doesn't arrest people. The Bureau does. The FBI takes over 1993. Special Agent Les Weiser Jr. reviews the CIA's evidence. His assessment, compelling but not conclusive. They need more. The FBI opens a counter-espionage investigation. Codename Night Mover. They begin surveillance. Ames is followed to work, followed home, followed to lunch. They photograph everyone he meets. They record his phone calls. They track his movements. But Ames is trained in counter-surveillance. He knows the techniques. He checks for tails. He varies his routes. He uses payphones. The FBI needs a breakthrough. They need him to make a mistake. Or they need to get inside his house. They prepare for the long game. Months of surveillance. Hundreds of agents. Thousands of hours watching a man who knows he might be watched. And then, Rick Ames does something careless. Something that will end his career in espionage forever. The systematic hunt. Early 1993. The FBI surveillance team settles into routine. They watch Ames drive his Jaguar to work. They watch him return home. They photograph his lunch meetings, his grocery shopping, his mundane suburban life. Nothing suspicious. He appears to be a normal CIA officer living a normal life, except for the fact that his lifestyle costs 4 times his salary. Les Weiser knows the statistics. Most espionage investigations fail. The target gets spooked. Evidence disappears. The case fizzles. You watch someone for months, spend millions of dollars, and come up empty. But Weiser also knows that traitors make mistakes. They get comfortable. They get sloppy. They believe their own cover stories. The FBI begins reconstructing Ames's entire career. Every operation he touched, every file he accessed, every trip he took. They're building a mosaic. Thousands of small pieces that, viewed together, reveal the full picture. They discover that Ames had access to more than just the 10 agents executed in 1985 to 86. He compromised over 100 CIA operations. He exposed 20 Soviet agents working for the West. He provided the KGB with technical intelligence on American capabilities. He gave Moscow information about NATO war plans, nuclear deployment strategies, and satellite reconnaissance. The damage assessment is staggering. Some analysts estimate he set back American intelligence operations against Russia by a decade. And he's still working at the CIA, still showing up to meetings, still handling classified material. The question becomes, arrest him now or watch him longer? If they arrest too early, they might not have enough evidence to convict. He could walk free on technicalities. But if they wait too long, he might flee. Or worse, he might compromise current operations they don't even know about. Weiser makes the decision. They need to get inside his house. The breakthrough, September 1993. The FBI executes a black bag job. While Ames and his wife are away, agents enter their Arlington home with a secret warrant. They photograph documents, they copy computer files, they install monitoring devices. What they find is a counterintelligence officer's nightmare. In Ames's study, classified CIA documents marked top secret, not copies, originals, documents he removed from headquarters and never returned. On his computer, communications with his KGB handler, names of CIA operations, summaries of classified briefings. In his trash, notes on dead drop locations, chalk-marked signals, meeting schedules. Ames has violated every protocol. He's brought classified material home. He's left evidence lying around. He's used his personal computer for espionage communications. The FBI photographs everything. When Ames returns home, nothing appears disturbed. He has no idea that investigators now have documentary proof of his betrayal. But they still want more. They want to catch him in the act. They want to observe a dead drop, a meeting with his handler, irrefutable proof of espionage in progress. They expand surveillance. More agents, more cameras, more phone taps. And then, on a cold morning in October, they get the break they've been waiting for. The mistake. October 9th, 1993. Near Nottoway Park, Vienna, Virginia. Ames pulls his Jaguar into a quiet residential area. He's conducting counter-surveillance, standard procedure before a dead drop. He circles the block, checks his mirrors, looks for tails. The FBI surveillance team stays back. They have 12 vehicles rotating positions. He won't spot them. Satisfied he's clean, Ames parks near Nottoway Park. He walks into the woods carrying a trash bag. Inside the bag, classified documents for his handler. He places the bag at a pre-arranged location near a footbridge. Then he walks to a nearby signpost and places a chalk mark, a signal that the drop is complete. FBI cameras capture everything. But that's not the mistake. The mistake comes 3 hours later when Ames returns to his office at CIA headquarters. He's supposed to access certain classified files, files he needs to explain to his handler why he's taking home specific documents. It's his cover story. He's reviewing these files for a legitimate work project. But he forgets. He gets busy with routine meetings. By the end of the day, he realizes he never accessed the files. A small mistake. Meaningless in isolation. Except the FBI is now monitoring which classified files Ames accesses and when. They're building a pattern. Which files does he view before dead drops? When they review the logs for October 9th, they notice something impossible. Ames made a dead drop containing classified documents, but he didn't access those documents before leaving work, which means he brought them home days or weeks earlier, which means he pre-positioned classified material for espionage purposes. It's the smoking gun, not the dramatic kind, not a confession or a recorded conversation, just an administrative error, a failure to cover his tracks. But it's enough. It proves premeditation. It proves espionage. It's prosecutable. Les Weiser reviews the evidence. October 9th connects Ames to the dead drop through surveillance photos. The file access logs prove he couldn't have had a legitimate reason for possessing those documents. His home search revealed classified material in his possession. The case is complete. The trap closes. October 1993. February 1994. The FBI continues surveillance while prosecutors build the case. They watch Ames make 2 more dead drops. They observe him receive cash payments. They document meetings with his handler in Bogotá. The evidence becomes overwhelming. Financial records show $4.6 million in unexplained deposits. Surveillance confirms espionage activity. Documents seized from his home contain handwritten notes about classified operations, but they face a problem. Ames is scheduled for a temporary assignment to Moscow. He's being sent to CIA's Russia station for a 3-month rotation. If he reaches Moscow, he's gone. The Russians will never extradite him. He'll live out his life as a protected defector, appearing on Russian television to mock American intelligence. The FBI accelerates its timeline. They'll arrest him before he leaves for Moscow. February 21st, 1994 becomes the target date, a Monday morning. They'll take him at his home, away from CIA headquarters, where classified material could be compromised during the arrest. Les Weiser assembles a team. 60 FBI agents. They rehearse the arrest. They prepare for the possibility that Ames is armed or that he'll destroy evidence. But they expect neither. Ames isn't a violent man. He's a bureaucrat who committed treason for money. When confronted, they believe he'll surrender. The eve of reckoning, February 20th, 1994. Evening. Rick Ames has no idea that tomorrow his life ends. He's home with his wife, Rosario. They're discussing their upcoming Moscow assignment. She's excited. She's never lived in Russia. He's calculating, Moscow means new operational opportunities, new ways to exploit his access. 9 years of successful espionage have made him confident. Perhaps overconfident. He believes his tradecraft is solid. He believes the CIA's counterintelligence capabilities are weak. He's watched investigators fumble previous mole hunts. He thinks he's smarter than them. He sleeps well that night. 6 blocks away, in an FBI command vehicle, Les Weiser doesn't sleep at all. He reviews the arrest plan one more time. He thinks about everything that could go wrong. He thinks about Aldrich Ames walking free on a technicality. And he thinks about the 10 people whose names Ames sold for money. Soviet citizens who trusted America to protect them, Who risked execution to feed intelligence to the West? Who died in Lubyanka prison because Rick Ames wanted a house he couldn't afford? Tomorrow, Weiser thinks, we end this. The clock runs out. At dawn, the FBI moves. The last morning, February 21st, 1994, 6 a.m. Rick Ames wakes up to an ordinary Monday. He showers. He dresses for work. Suit and tie, CIA badge clipped to his belt. He drinks coffee in his kitchen while reading the Washington Post. The lead story is about Russia's economic collapse. Ames finds it ironic. The country that paid him millions is now broke. He wonders if they'll continue funding his espionage now that the Cold War is over. He'll ask his handler soon. At 6:10 a.m., he kisses his wife goodbye. She's still in her bathrobe. He tells her he'll be home late, a meeting at headquarters. He walks to his Jaguar. The morning is cold, the sky still dark. He starts the engine to warm it up. He scrapes frost from the windshield. 1 block away, Les Weiser gives the signal. All units, he's mobile. Stand by. 12 FBI vehicles surround Ames's neighborhood. 60 agents are positioned. They've blocked both ends of his street. When he backs out of his driveway, there's nowhere to go. At 6:15 a.m., Ames shifts into reverse. The arrest. He sees the FBI vehicles immediately. 3 sedans blocking the street. Agents emerging from cars, weapons drawn. For maybe 2 seconds, Ames considers running. Back into the house. Destroy evidence. Warn his wife. Call his handler. But he knows it's over. You don't escape from 60 FBI agents, and the fact that they're here now means they have enough evidence to arrest him. Which means they've been watching for weeks. Which means they already have everything. He puts the car in park. He turns off the engine. He raises his hands where they can see them. Les Weiser approaches the driver's side window. He's holding a badge and a warrant. Aldrich Ames, FBI. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage. Ames doesn't speak, doesn't ask questions, doesn't protest. He simply nods. They cuff him. They read him his rights. They search his Jaguar and find a classified document in his briefcase. One more felony count. His wife, Rosario, watches from the front door in her bathrobe. She's screaming that this is a mistake, that her husband is innocent, that the FBI has the wrong man. But she knows. She's been part of it. The FBI has evidence that she participated in dead drops, received money, helped with counter-surveillance. She'll be arrested within hours. Ames sits in the back of an FBI sedan, hands cuffed behind him. He stares out the window at his Arlington mansion, the house that cost $540,000 in cash, the house that required betraying 10 people. He will never see it again. The interrogation FBI Washington field office. They bring Ames to an interview room. Gray walls, metal table, 2 chairs, classic interrogation setup. But Les Weiser doesn't start with accusations. He starts with evidence. He places photographs on the table. Surveillance photos of Ames making dead drops, meeting with his handler, placing chalk marks. Then bank records, deposits totaling millions, cash purchases, offshore wire transfers, then documents seized from his home, classified files, handwritten notes, computer files with agent identities. The evidence covers the table. There's no room for denial. Weiser leans back. We have enough to convict you 10 times over. What you say now determines whether you spend the rest of your life in federal prison or whether you face a death penalty case. The choice is yours. Ames stares at the photographs. At his own face, captured in surveillance photos he never knew existed. At proof of 9 years of espionage. And then, quietly, "I want a lawyer." The interrogation ends. Under American law, once a suspect invokes their right to counsel, questioning must stop. But Ames will eventually talk. Not to the FBI, to his own lawyers first. And later, once his plea deal is negotiated, to CIA debriefers who need to know the full scope of what he compromised. The confession, weeks later. Federal Detention Center. With his lawyers present, Ames begins to explain. Not to express remorse, not to seek forgiveness, but to trade information for leniency. His wife, Rosario, is also facing charges. He wants her sentence reduced. The deal: Ames will tell the CIA everything. Every document he passed, every agent he betrayed, every operation he compromised. In exchange, Rosario will receive a lighter sentence, and Ames will avoid the death penalty. He accepts. Over weeks of debriefings, the full scope emerges. Ames compromised. Over 100 CIA operations. More than 20 Soviet intelligence officers working for the West technical intelligence on American spy satellites. Details of CIA operations in dozens of countries. NATO war plans and nuclear deployment strategies. At least 10 people were executed as a direct result of his betrayals. Dmitry Polyakov, shot 1988. Valery Martinov, shot 1987. Sergei Motorin, shot 1987. Vladimir Pigusov, shot 1987, 1987. And 6 others whose names remain partially classified. The CIA debriefers ask why he did it. Ames's answer is chilling in its banality. "I needed the money." It was as simple as that. No ideology, no coercion, no grand political statement, just greed. They ask if he feels remorse for the people who died. He's silent for a long moment. Then, "They knew the risks." We all do in this business. It's not exactly remorse. The human cost, CIA headquarters. Memorial Wall. Sandy Grimes stands before the CIA's Memorial Wall. A marble wall engraved with stars representing officers killed in the line of duty. Some stars have names. Others remain anonymous, their identities still classified. She counts 10 stars that represent people betrayed by Rick Ames. 10 people she knew. 10 people who trusted America to protect them. Dmitry Polyakov had provided intelligence for 25 years. He was a Soviet general with access to missile secrets. He believed in democracy. When the KGB arrested him in 1986, they tortured him for information about other CIA sources. Then, they shot him. Valery Martinov was a KGB officer stationed in Washington who became disillusioned with Soviet communism. He fed the FBI information about KGB operations in America. Ames identified him in June 1985. Martinov was recalled to Moscow in November. He was executed in 1987. Sergei Motorin believed the Soviet system was corrupt and failing. He provided details about KGB recruitment operations. Ames betrayed him for $50,000. Motorin was arrested, tried, and shot. Each star represents someone who made a choice to risk everything, and Rick Ames sold them out for money to buy a house he didn't need. Grimes will spend years thinking about this, about the investigation that took 5 years, about the fact that Ames operated for 9 years before anyone seriously investigated him, about the institutional failures that allowed a mole to thrive. She will wonder how many would still be alive if someone had noticed the Jaguar, the mansion, The cash purchases. If someone had asked the obvious question, where is this money coming from? But hindsight is a torture device. She knows that. You can't save the past. You can only prevent it from happening again. Outside the detention center, Rick Ames waits for his sentencing. He has no idea what the rest of his life will look like. He's about to find out. Justice, U.S. District Court, Eastern District of Virginia. April 28, 1994. Aldrich Ames stands before Judge Claude Hilton. He's pleaded guilty to espionage and conspiracy to commit espionage. There will be no trial, no jury, just sentencing. The prosecution presents their case: 9 years of espionage, 10 executions, over 100 compromised operations, $4.6 million in payments from the KGB. The damage is incalculable. Ames's defense attorneys argue for leniency. He cooperated with investigators. He provided full disclosure. He accepted responsibility. Judge Hilton is unmoved. He calls Ames's betrayal one of the most serious security breaches in the history of American intelligence. The sentence: life in federal prison without possibility of parole. Rosario Ames, tried separately, receives a 5-year sentence for conspiracy and tax evasion. She'll be released in 1999. Rick Ames is transferred to the federal Supermax prison in Allenwood, Pennsylvania. 23 hours a day in a cell. 1 hour for recreation. No contact with other inmates. No classified material. No secrets to sell. He is 53 years old. He will die in prison. The Investigator's Reflection, 2024. 30 years after the arrest. Sandy Grimes is now retired. She wrote a book about the investigation, Circle of Treason. She gives occasional interviews about the case. When asked what she thinks about when she remembers Aldrich Ames, her answer is immediate. The people he killed. Always the people he killed. She doesn't think of Ames as a mastermind or a brilliant spy. She thinks of him as a clerk who sold files, a bureaucrat who happened to have access and chose to exploit it. The investigation consumed 5 years of her life. It required methodical analysis of thousands of documents. It required fighting institutional resistance from people who didn't want to believe the CIA could be penetrated. But what haunts her is the time lag. Ames betrayed his first agents in 1985. He wasn't arrested until 1994. 9 years. How many operations were compromised during that time? How many agents died while investigators failed to connect the dots? She's proud of the work. She caught a traitor. But she knows it took too long. And she knows the systemic failures that allowed Ames to operate weren't fully fixed. Financial disclosure forms are still filed and forgotten. Lifestyle inconsistencies are still explained away. The institutional culture still resists believing that one of us could be a traitor. We learned lessons, Grimes says. Whether we applied them is another question. The systemic response: CIA headquarters. Post-Ames reforms. The Ames case triggered institutional panic. If a counterintelligence officer could operate undetected for 9 years, who else might be out there? The CIA implemented reforms: mandatory random polygraph testing for all officers with access to sensitive operations, enhanced financial monitoring systems that automatically flag lifestyle inconsistencies, stricter enforcement of need-to-know protocols, compartmentalization of agent identities. So no single officer has access to all sources. Regular counterintelligence reviews of officers in sensitive positions. the FBI established a dedicated counterintelligence division with expanded resources and authority. Congress passed legislation requiring stricter vetting procedures and harsher penalties for espionage. But the most significant change was cultural. The Ames case shattered the assumption that CIA officers were above suspicion. The institutional arrogance that allowed Ames to thrive, the belief that our people wouldn't betray us, was replaced with something closer to paranoia, which has its own costs. Paranoia inhibits trust. It makes recruitment harder. It creates an atmosphere where innocent people face suspicion because of minor anomalies. But the alternative, blind trust, produced Aldrich Ames. The intelligence community learned, trust, but verify, and verify again. The unanswered questions. What we still don't know. Despite Ames's debriefings, questions remain. Some operations he compromised remain classified. Some agents he betrayed are still unknown.